Welcome and thank you for joining us for our webinar celebrating the first anniversary of Michigan's expungement law. Everyone at Safe and Just Michigan is thrilled you are participating. We've muted your microphones to ensure that everybody can hear the panel, but please feel free to ask any questions you might have using the chat function on Zoom. Let me hand this over to our moderator for today's webinar, the amazing Sheena Meade. Sheena?
Thank you so much, Josh. And hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Sheena Meade. I'm the Executive Director for the Clean Slate initiative, and I am just honored that Safe and Just Michigan would invite me back again to celebrate with them on this one-year anniversary. In fall of 2020, Michigan passed the Clean Slate law, which had two parts. One, expanding eligibility expansion effective April 11th, 2021, and two, automatic expungement effective April 11th, 2023. On this day, 1 year ago, I joined you to celebrate the effective day of the eligibility expansion, along with a number of prominent supporters of the Clean Slate package, including Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist, Attorney General Nessel, Chief Justice McCormick, and House Judiciary Chairman Filler. Today, we mark 1 year of expanded eligibility, and we'll hear about the impact of these changes, including how many more people have petitioned for expungement since the law went into effect, and stories of how expanding eligibility has affected people's lives. We will also look ahead 1 year from today to when the automatic expungement law becomes effective, and hear more about the implementation process and what likely impact the law, and what the likely impact of the law will be when it goes into effect April 11th, 2023. So looking back at year one of Clean Slate, to start off our look back at year one of Clean Slate, we have the first of two videos featuring Michigan residents who benefited from the Clean Slate law this past year. Both videos were produced by our partners at Center for American Progress and Safe and Just Michigan. This first video features Tommy Barnes. We could go ahead and roll the tape.
Having a felony record is the single worst thing that could have happened to me. It's like the scarlet A that you wear on your chest forever. You don't get any reprieve from that. Being a poor black kid in a black neighborhood, the easiest way for me to find my way towards making money was through selling drugs. Selling weed was what helped us to pay the light bill. The night I got arrested, police pulled up in the side door. They kicked in the side door there, and yeah, this is where it all took place at. Now I'm on my way to jail at 23 years old. First time I've ever been in trouble. I did not in that moment understand the long-term implications of what being a felon meant. The felony conviction was on my record for almost 20 years. Not only was it hindering me from getting jobs, but it was hindering the time that I got to spend in my own children's lives. You can't go on that school field trip to the apple orchard. You can't volunteer to be the kids' basketball coach because I now had to check this box as a felon. I suffered long enough, and it was time for the redemption. My life today is very different from where it was 20 years ago. I've dedicated and devoted my entire life to making sure more kids that grow up in the community I grew up in don't fall victim. We started TCB in 2008. It was just an after-school program to create opportunities for kids. I was able to get to the kids earlier than the drug dealers were. But most importantly, what happened is we started a youth leadership group here. The kids were getting involved. They were volunteering around the city. They were changing the climate. I got my record expunged in 2021. The judge that expunged my felonies was the prosecuting attorney on the case 20 years ago. To have the same person that ended my life be the person that breathed life back into you, it was nuts. The things that the judge said to me that day, he was like, you are the definition of rehabilitation. It was a moment of clarity. Like, I did the right things. The thing that caused me the most pain is the thing that gave birth to the best work that I've done in my life. It's because of great organizations like Safe and Just legislating in Lansing or being the boots on the ground that's giving this messaging to our community. It's organizations like that that open the door of opportunity for younger people to not have to suffer through what I went through. Having these felonies off my record, I feel like the fat kid who's not fat anymore.
Wow, that was a very powerful story. And I just want to say congratulations to Tommy Barnes, and also thank you for sharing your story. It's so important for us to tell the stories and humanize these issues and talk about the impacts. We are now joined by Michigan State Court Administrator, the Honorable Tom Boyd, to talk a bit about the first year of Clean Slate from the court's perspective. For those of you who aren't familiar with Judge Boyd or his office, he was appointed state court administrator in February of 2020 by the Michigan Supreme Court. As a state court administrator, Judge Boyd leads the state court administrative office, which exercises administrative oversight over Michigan's lower courts on behalf of Michigan Supreme Court. Prior to becoming the state court administrator, Judge Boyd served a district court judge for 15 years in Ingham County. During his time on the bench, Judge Boyd presided over the court's mental health court and was active with law reform efforts, including the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission, the Michigan Trial Court Funding Commission, and the Michigan Joint Task on Jail and Pretrial Incarceration. Welcome, Judge Boyd.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Meade. Thanks to everybody at Safe and Just, not only for inviting me today, but for all the good work that you've done with the folks from Clean Slate and lots of other partners. I'm going to talk about the work that the State Court Administrative Office has done in the last 12 months, actually a little more than 12 months, to prepare the courts for the Clean Slate work, the application process, which has gone on since April 11th of 2021. And then in the latter part of the program, we'll talk about the work that we're doing to prepare for April 11th, 2023. The work that I'm going to show you today is not really mine. Thanks to all the good people at State Court Administrative Office that have done this work. Everybody from Bobby Morrow and Michelle Muscat to Stacy Westra, Ryan Gamby, Noah Bradow. These are the good folks that have done the work to prepare the courts. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and talk about the resources, but at the same time, I'll try and add the links to the resources into the chat so that you can find them yourselves later and answer your questions. We're going to start. There we go. I think I got it. Nope, wrong page. Sorry. Why did it not give me this? Still the wrong thing. Sorry. Let's start with setting the sites in the chat. This is the first document. I should be able to see that in the chat. See if I can actually put it in the screen share. Sorry for the delay. That is not the right screen. All right, I think I have it. So the State Court Administrator's Office, as soon as the laws were passed, began to work at helping the courts understand. This is the first document that was created, has to do with the legislative overview, and it details each of the laws that was passed. And using the link that I put in the chat, you can use the hyperlinks in the page to go look at each individual bill, and you can see the statutory reference, so you can find it that way. But the document goes on to describe what each bill does and how the law was changed by the bill. So rather than go through each of these, I'm giving you the resource. You can figure this out yourself by looking at the document that was created, again, by the analysts that I mentioned earlier. So the next thing that we had to do was, you may or may not know, the State Court Administrative Office, which is kind of the back office that a lot of the trial courts in Michigan also is responsible for forms generation. Becky Snells and a lot of other folks working on forms began to work on the forms needed to change the application set-aside process. And these forms, this next document that I'm going to put a link in the chat, is a document that describes the forms that were changed with links to each of the forms. There we go. I think it'll let me. All right, so that link will take you to this document, and you can see this is from Thomas Myers, who was the head of the forms unit at the time. And in here, these are hyperlinks to take you to each of the forms, and you can see what laws change the forms. These are the forms you can use yourself to apply for a set aside of a criminal conviction, or if you're assisting others, these forms will be what you need in the processing. The next piece of work that was done was trying to prepare the courts. So this memo went out, as you can see, in March. And then we're going to move to this memo that went out in June. And again, I'll put the link in the chat so that you can have this yourself and use it as a reference in your work. And this talks about this memo describes the different forms, the different changes. It goes into detail on the changes that were made and how the courts will process those changes. You can see the links back to the law in each case. All right, and you also are probably aware that the legislature subsequently amended the law having to do with drunk driving. So there's a second amendment to the two main forms. The main forms are the application to set aside a conviction and the order granting that application. So this memo from February of this year is another amendment to those two forms to allow them to be used for operating while intoxicated cases, because that change didn't happen until 2021. So there's additional material going to the courts explaining to them how to manage the change in the drunk driving statute. Finally, the last thing I want to point you to and give you the link to, actually, I'll give you the link to the drunk driving memo, that change first, so you can help people who have the need to set aside a drunk driving or an OWI conviction. And then the final thing I'll give you is the link to our overall website on the Clean Slate initiative. You can see this is the One Court of Justice site, and this is the page for Clean Slate, where everything we have, all the material that we have available for courts and the public is right here in one place, with a description of the legislation. Picture the governor, lieutenant governor at the signing there. What the state police tell me is that we've gone from between 2,500 and 3,000 applications a year to about 9,000 last year. Now, that's a great start, but you saw from the graphic earlier that we still have a long way to go. Unfortunately, an application to set aside was never something that rose to the level of being collected as data by the judicial branch. And that says really a lot more about the way we collected data than it does the Supreme Court's value of the application to set aside. Michigan's trial court system has 16 different case management vendors, each of them gathering information on individual cases in a slightly different way. So as we collect data and try and help folks like Safe and Just and Clean Slate to make public policy arguments, or help the legislature make public policy decisions, or help the Supreme Court to make public policy decisions, we rely on data that is not collected in a way to advance public policy or to help understanding of the court system. Now, this is something that the current court, under the leadership of Chief Justice Bridget McCormick, is working on pretty hard. Ms. Meade mentioned the Chief Justice in her remarks as it relates to Clean Slate. She also was with the Lieutenant Governor, co-chair of the Joint Task Force on Jail and Pretrial Incarceration. All of these efforts require data. So we, as a matter of fact, tomorrow, we'll find out if the House Appropriations Committee take the next step in advancing Governor Whitmer's recommended $175 million extra appropriation for us to take that next step and to have a unified case management system where I could tell you exactly how many applications have been filed and have been granted. But for today, I think the report of the Attorney General's office is probably pretty accurate. And we're looking at about a threefold increase, 21 over 19, which again is great, but we've got a long way to go. I know I'm coming back in the later part of the program to talk about the year going forward and what steps we're taking as it relates to preparing for the automatic set aside. But unless there's any questions, that's what we've been doing to try and implement the good work that you all put in effectuating the implementing the legislation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Judge Boyd. Really important information that you shared today. Thank you for sharing the resources as well. Sometimes this could get so unfamiliar for just regular folks who want to understand, and it's so such an honor for you able to take this time out and to explain to people in Michigan the role that your office play. So next we will hear from John Cooper and Kamau Sandiford from Just and Safe Michigan. John Cooper is the Executive Director of Safe and Just Michigan, a role he has served in since 2019. Prior to becoming Executive Director, John served as Safe and Just Michigan's Policy Director, a policy advisor to Michigan State Rep. David LeGrand, and as a litigator at a very large law firm in Washington, D.C. Kamau Sandiford is a Safe and Just Michigan's Clean Slate Program Manager. Prior to joining Safe and Just Michigan in 2021, Kamau was an expungement attorney at the Cooley Law School's Access to Justice Clinic in Grand Rapids. Safe and Just has been doing public education, outreach, and expungement fairs statewide over the last year. And John and Kamau are here to provide a bit more detail about the process and what they have learned from it. And I would kindly ask that Noella and Judge Boyd come off screen so John and Kamau could be highlighted.
Thanks so much, Sheena. At Safe and Just Michigan, we were very excited when Clean Slate passed, but we knew both from the research on expungement and from our own experience that the petition process was either unknown or inaccessible to the vast majority of the people who are eligible for it. So we thought it was important to try to help bridge that gap. That insight led to a year of sustained statewide outreach to organizers, community groups, legal service providers, impacted people, elected officials, and local government agencies that helped build out a statewide network of people and organizations working on expungements. This, we believe, has done a lot to improve access to expungement statewide. As Judge Boyd noted, there's been a massive increase in the number of petitions filed. We certainly can't take credit for all of that, but as you'll hear from Kamau, I think we can take some credit for it. We're really proud of the work that we've done over the past year. Before I turn things over to Kamau, I want to thank the Clean Slate Initiative for supporting our work on this issue, and certainly Sheena for being here today. And also thank our core partners on the outreach and legal services work we've been doing. They are Michigan Liberation, Nation Outside, Michigan Faith in Action, Legal Services of South Central Michigan, Michigan Indian Legal Services, Lakeshore Legal Aid of Western Michigan, and Legal Services of Eastern Michigan. Thanks, everybody. Kamau?
Thanks, John. And as you mentioned, much of our work relies on our ability to reach out to the community, and that involved developing a network of partner organizations that are willing to assist us with reaching out to members of the community that are in need of this type of assistance. So over the past year, that's what we focused on doing. Michigan has 83 counties, so obviously that's pretty significant ground to cover. But with the help of the organizations that you just mentioned, John, along with our non-legal organizations like Michigan Liberation, Nation Outside, Michigan Faith in Action, they've all helped us in terms of getting the word out there and helping us move forward with some of these Clean Slate initiatives. And when I talk about Clean Slate initiatives, I'm referring to primarily the expungement fairs that we've planned and organized around the state, along with some of the educational webinars that we've done as well via Zoom in light of the ongoing pandemic that we're currently experiencing. So over the past year, what we've tried to do in terms of supporting our partners, obviously we provided financial support, and that has come in the form of covering expenses related to expungement fairs. One of the other things we've also done is we've tried to develop a statewide network of volunteer attorneys who are willing to support these fairs. If you've ever been to or heard of an expungement fair, you know that it's essentially a mechanism through which the community can access legal advice or legal support is something that they may not otherwise have access to. And so you're heavily reliant on volunteer attorneys, and we truly appreciate their support in terms of providing assistance at these fairs. So that's one of the big things that we focused on. Another thing that we've tried to do in terms of supporting these expungement fairs is helping with the pre-screening process. So as is the case with much of these fairs, we need to determine who's eligible and who's not for the expungement by petition process. And so that often relies on us running background checks ahead of time so that we can identify who's eligible, who's not. And that is a means of streamlining the process when it comes to these expungement fairs. So that's some of the ways we've tried to help our partners who are integral to these expungement fairs. In addition to that, we've also tried to promote each of not just our expungement fairs, but any type of Clean Slate initiative that we're involved in through social media, through traditional media, whatever the case may be. And that has also helped in terms of bolstering our numbers, bolstering the amount of people that attend these fairs, bolstering the amount of volunteer attorneys that we have that are willing to support us at these fairs as well. With respect to the actual expungement fairs that we've been involved in roughly 20 expungement fairs. They've served roughly 11 counties, and we estimate roughly 2,300 people have actually attended our expungement fairs over the last year, which is obviously a significant number. And it's a number that we're certainly proud of, and we hope to continue building on that number moving forward into 2022 and into 2023. Speaking of which, as John mentioned, and as Judge Boyd mentioned, the automated expungement system will get up and running in 2023, and we're going to touch on that in a little bit. Again, much of our work has focused on the expungement by application process, but we hope to transition to creating more awareness regarding the automated expungement system. And that's something I believe, John, you're going to kind of touch on right now.
I think I'm gonna defer that one until the second
Okay.
half. So
Alright.
I think the one thing I would add is we haven't just done fairs. We've also done trainings for lawyers. We've done general interest outreach events. I think over 100 of those, and it's been a great experience, and we're looking forward to doing more in the next year as we look forward to auto. And I think with that, Sheena has what's next.
Yes, that's awesome. Let me just tell you, I will tell you, as I've been getting from out the office since the pandemic is doing this, wavering down a little bit. And as I'm traveling the country, a lot of influencers, folks on a national level want to know how they can support Michigan in your work and implementation. And I'm so excited to go back and share how you're doing the fairs and the training. I mean, we even had people down like Justin Bieber trying to figure out how they could get the word out around what we're doing with Clean Slate. So it's excited to hear all the work that you all are doing. So to close out our look back at year one of Clean Slate in Michigan, we have the second of 2 videos featuring Michigan residents who benefited from the Clean Slate law this past year. This video features Erica Edwards.
One of the downfalls of having a felony, you are denied apartments, you are denied jobs. It put a lot of stress on me. That affects home, it affects your life with your children, and I love being a mommy. I love to come home and bake cookies and provide for them. I've never touched a gun, I've never fired a gun before, I've never even held a gun. The whole thing is just so very hard to talk about. My brother is a street guy, and I knew he was a street guy before I moved in with him. So I remember that night clearly. My brother was shot. He was bleeding. I dropped him off at the emergency, and I pulled out, and a police car pulled behind me. He asked, "Is there a gun in the car?" And I'm like, "No, there's no gun in the car, officer." And he asked me to get out the car so he can search the car. And I was like, "Okay, let me grab my purse." And when I picked up my purse, I could feel the weight of a gun. It felt like gravity just pulled everything down in me. After I got that felony on my record, I applied for 2 apartment buildings that I really wanted to move into. And when my background check came back with the felony on it, I was blanket denied entry into those apartments. If I would fill out an application and they will send back something that says, "Okay, we need to do a background check," I'd be like, forget it. It stayed on my record for 6 long years. I like my new apartment. Oh, it feels amazing. I am so excited to be here. My full kitchen, which I am going to enjoy because at my last apartment, my kitchen was so small that I didn't get to do all the baking and stuff I wanted to do. The best day of my life was absolutely giving birth to my children, but the second best day of my life was getting a second chance in life. That expungement was everything. It was a second chance at life. I'm a full-time mom, full-time student, and a full-time worker. My youngest, my 9-year-old, he was like, "You don't have a criminal record." I was like, "Yeah, absolutely right. I don't have a criminal record."
I cannot help but to smile and tear up at the same time. Erica, just thank you for sharing your story. Such a well-put video from our Partners Center for American Progress in Safe and Just Michigan. Beautiful video. I hope that folks will get the link and share it widely, post it on your social, share with your family and friends, and let's get the story out around the impact that having a clean slate could have for someone. Thank you so much again for that video and sharing your story, Erica. So the second part of today's webinar looks forward to the effective date of the automatic expungement, which is April 11th, 2023. I want everyone to hear this date again, April 11th, 2023. I'm hoping that they will invite me back next year on April 11th and we'll be all in person celebrating in Michigan on this date. But 1 year from today, automatic expungement is a new thing and exciting innovation in criminal record sealing policy. Michigan was just the 3rd state in the country to pass it and is, I believe, the broadest that has passed thus far. So we are looking forward to seeing it go live next year. Because automatic expungement is a new policy that requires courts and other parts of government to change the way they do things, a lot goes into implementation of automatic expungement laws. To help us get a better sense of the challenges, we are joined by Noella Sudbury. Noella, you want to come on? And I just have to put my little shameless plug in there that I was able to be in Utah when Clean Slate went to implementation and see Noella in all her glory and seeing all her work come to manifestation and hear the stories of directly impacted people, seeing the governor cry as this law went into effect because it really impacts people's lives. And I just want to thank Noella personally again for allowing me to be a part of that, to witness that historic day. Noella is a former public defender and licensed attorney in Utah who founded Clean Slate Utah and is the current CEO of Rasa, a new public benefit corporation on a mission to make it simple and affordable for all justice-involved people to clear their criminal records. Previously, while serving as a senior policy advisor to Salt Lake County Mayor Ben McAdams, Noella led the successful campaign to pass Utah's Clean Slate law, which automates the criminal record expungement process for more than 450,000 people of Utah. Noella helped Utah successfully complete implementation of its Clean Slate law earlier this year. And I hand it over to you, Noella.
Thank you so much, Sheena, and thank you for coming out to Utah to celebrate our implementation efforts with us. It was so great to have you. Congratulations to John and Judge Boyd and everybody in Michigan on passing your Clean Slate law. I'm so honored to be part of your anniversary event, and I'm here celebrating with you. So I've prepared a short slide deck to talk a little bit about our journey of implementation in Utah. So I'm just going to pull that up quickly, and I'm also going to talk very fast because I only have 10 minutes, but please put questions in the chat and I'm always happy to connect after as well. Okay, can you all see that? Does it move? Sheena, is my slide moving?
It's moving and sliding. Yes,
okay, great. Awesome. Okay, as Sheena mentioned, I'm the director of Clean Slate Utah, a new organization working to raise awareness of Utah's Clean Slate law and help people determine whether they're eligible for automatic clearance. So we'll start with some really brief background about what Utah's Clean Slate law is and what it covers. In March 2019, Utah became the 2nd state in the nation to automate the criminal record expungement process for certain qualifying offenses. Our law was supposed to go into effect May 1st, 2020, and then COVID-19 changed the world and our implementation efforts got delayed. However, we are now back on track and implementation officially began on February 10th, 2022, which was just 2 months ago. Utah government agencies are now working together to use technology to provide relief to hundreds of thousands of people with criminal records in Utah. So automatic clearance laws, I won't spend much time on this because you guys have one, shift that process burden away from the individual to the government. Utah's Clean Slate law automatically clears misdemeanor A drug possession offenses, most misdemeanor B's and C's, and all infractions. We wanted to get felonies into our law. We hope to get them into our law in the future. Right now, ours is a misdemeanor only law, but we are very excited about it nonetheless as a step towards automation. And as Sheena mentioned, it will impact more than 450,000 people in Utah. So this slide talks about our implementation plan. So Utah, unlike Michigan, has a centralized court process, which makes it easier to initiate the automatic clearance process through the courts. So our implementation begins with court code, and with the help of Code for America, we were able to write computer software to analyze court records to identify eligible and people and records that met the clean slate criteria. So this was about a year or so ago after the code was written. The courts wanted some assurance that it was working. So the next thing that we did was partner with data scientists from the University of Utah to conduct a study to test the code, to validate it for accuracy. No one wanted to clear the wrong records. And so how that worked, the court provided 3,000 randomly selected cases to 20 volunteer validators. These were people like the people on this call with experience in expungement law, people from our BCI team, lawyers, prosecutors to review these cases. 1,500 of them were eligible as determined by the code, and 1,500 were ineligible as determined by the code. And the question for the validators was, how well is this code working? And validators reviewed cases just as they would manually if they were helping someone determine whether they were eligible for automatic clearance. And then we compared that human determination to what the code said. Huge success. We started with an 86% initial match rate. This means that the Code for America helped us write, matched the human expert's determination in 86% of cases. There was the 14% initial error rate, which was made up of false positives, cases where the code was saying they were eligible, but the attorneys were saying they were not eligible, and 116 false negatives, which were cases where the attorney said the person was eligible, but the code did not. Upon second review, it turns out humans also make errors, and only 3.5% of those cases were true false positives. The reasons for all the false positives and the false negatives were identified, and the code was adjusted accordingly. After all of the changes were made, the data scientists predicted that the error rate for Utah's implementation would be under 1% compared to about the 3% error rate of humans. So really, really great. We wrote the code, we tested, we made sure it worked. On February 10th, we began clearing the records. There are so many records, it's over 800,000 records in Utah that are eligible, that it will probably take until the rest of this calendar year for the courts to get through the backlog. And so there's more work to do in the meantime. And the work we're doing now is to notify. Our law has no direct notification requirement, so we're going to clear close to 500,000 people's records in Utah, but we all have to work together to spread the word. Because of course, if people do not know their record has been cleared, they're going to continue to check that box. And there are, while many people are clean slate eligible, there are several individuals who have felony records or misdemeanor records that don't qualify under the automatic process, but can be cleared under the petition-based process. And we want to help those people as well. This was one of the main reasons Clean Slate Utah was formed. Our goals are to make sure the law is fully implemented, that people are aware of the law, that people take advantage of the law, and that we're continuing to have as a central piece of our work, the stories of directly impacted people. So it sounds like similar to the efforts in Michigan, we're working alongside many, many community-based organizations throughout the state. We have about 50 organizations that we work with. We're launching a public education campaign of videos, social media, clinics, fairs. We are covering the cost of the application fee for people who still need to go through that petition-based process, and providing clean navigation support to people with records. So how will people know if their records are automatically cleared? We'll be posting information on our website. We are also working with Rasa, which was mentioned, to develop a mobile app to make it just super easy for people to understand what's on their record and what is eligible for expungement now and in the future. We're hoping to release this app in May. In the meantime, individuals who have their case numbers can track them through the courts. We are low on time, so I'm going to skip our legislative wins and just move to our takeaways. So John asked, could we provide some advice to Michigan as you're looking forward and implementing your law? Here are my 5 takeaways. Meet regularly, hire someone good to manage the project. Make sure that from the courts, the Department of Public Safety, from the community, there are good point people that just own it and continue to move forward. From what Judge Boyd was saying, it sounds like he'll have no problem with that, but it is a tremendous amount of work, and congratulations on your progress so far. Provide state funding for notification. There wasn't any in Utah, and that was really problematic. Luckily, we have received grant funding and support from the National Clean Slate Initiative and other organizations, but we've had to raise a lot of money, and that has kind of slowed our notification campaign. Social media is so huge. When we did survey data in Utah, the #1 place someone goes to start the criminal record clearance process is Facebook. Pennsylvania had similar data. People are so connected on social media, and it can be such an asset in spreading the word. It sounds like you guys are already doing that in Michigan. And then just partner with as many diverse organizations as you can, faith groups, government agencies, recovery centers, even organizations that have nothing to do with criminal justice reform. Really, you want it to be as broad as possible. Finally, work with your government agencies to establish a schedule for record clearing and push out regular updates. One kind of hurdle we're experiencing in Utah right now is while automatic record clearance has started, we're still waiting for that first report from the court on the number, types, in which records were cleared. And so it's really difficult to know exactly when somebody's record is going to be cleared and in what order. We are going in reverse chronological order, like starting with the records that are most recent that are eligible and working backwards. But it's still hard when you're working with a person to tell them whether it's going to be cleared tomorrow or in July or in December. And so whatever schedule you come up with, my advice would be post it, make it clear so that the people like Safe and Just who are on the ground trying to help people have the best information to help people determine when they're going to get that second chance. And that's all I've got.
Thank you, Noella. I will tell everyone, I put a bet on it, that next year we will be inviting Noella back as the implementation expert. And Noella, we do not take for granted that all the trial and error successes and fixings that you're doing in Utah is going to create a beautiful pathway for all the other states ahead that need to go through implementation. So we thank you for taking the little hits at first, bringing these great learnings and the 5 top things and recommendations of what to do or not to do. It means a lot to the advocates and to the people who's going to be getting Clean Slate in the future. So I want to next welcome back Michigan State Court Administrator Judge Boyd to talk about the automatic expungement and implementation from the court's perspective.
Thank you, and I really want to applaud the videos. They were excellently done. Thank you for sharing those. I'd like to thank Ms. Sudbury for starting or mentioning where we need to start, which is it's very complicated, the automatic set aside. I want to make 3 points. First, the original document that I sent the link to, page 11, is where the rules on automatic set aside begin. And they talk about what cases will be automatically set aside, what records, and what ones will not. So if you refer to page 11 of the document that I put in my first link, that's going to help you jumpstart your knowledge about what cases will be affected. Now in Michigan, there's actually 2 separate criminal records. The record maintained by the Michigan State Police in their criminal history records section, accessed through the Law Enforcement Information Network, is only for felonies and what I call printable misdemeanors. Now, what that means is that a misdemeanor, which is punishable by up to 93 days or more, requires fingerprinting, and that fingerprint is the connection to the state police criminal history. However, there are a whole bunch of misdemeanors that are 92 days or less, non-printable misdemeanors, which means you could be convicted of a misdemeanor that's punishable by up to 92 days or less, and not be fingerprinted, and that means the record is never sent to the Michigan State Police. So in Michigan, as we devise systems, plural, for automatic set-aside, we have to deal with both the printable misdemeanors and felonies maintained by the Michigan State Police and the non-printable misdemeanors that are not maintained by the Michigan State Police. I'm going to take those in that order, actually the opposite. I'll start talking about the non-printable misdemeanors first. So for folks who have convictions of misdemeanor offenses, which are punishable by up to 92 days or less, those records will all be wiped away after 7 years has passed from imposition of sentence. The court has the responsibility to wipe those records away after 7 years. So today, April 11th, 2022, the State Court Administrative Office has sent a memo to all judges saying 1 year from today, you are responsible for this process. The memo goes on to say that if you are a court that uses the case management system provided by the Michigan Supreme Court, the JIS, Justice Information Systems, that we're hard at work at this and you don't have anything to do right now. However, the trial courts that use one of the other 15 case management providers in the state need to be working aggressively with their case management providers to make sure they understand the requirements of the district courts as it relates to non-printable misdemeanors. There could be some circuit court convictions as non-printable misdemeanors as well, reduced from a felony, although it's much, much, much more unlikely. Now, the set-aside programming that the JIS is doing with the case management system won't be terribly complicated. We only need to make sure that we have all the data we need. As I mentioned in the first half of the presentation, our data is woefully inadequate across the system. Within the JIS system, it's not that bad. We just need to make sure we have the date of sentencing and we can calculate 7 years forward. Each month, we will do that. Each court is responsible under the law also for notifying the law enforcement agency that conducted the initial arrest that led to the conviction, that the conviction has been set aside. That way, law enforcement will know not to release any information about that case if they're asked under the Freedom of Information Act, or at least about the conviction, because the conviction is no longer public, it has been set aside. Now, the more complicated set aside are the felony and misdemeanor convictions maintained by the state police. Exactly as Ms. Sudbury said that they did in Utah, the Michigan State Police is currently creating what they're calling a rules engine. That's the algorithm that will help them figure out whether or not the individual charge is eligible for automatic set-aside. And when I say individual charge, I'm reminded that on the computer side, Michigan has always been a case-by-case data entry set. So in our case management systems, we don't track individual charges the way we track individual cases. So to make a case non-public is something we commonly do for a variety of reasons. But to make a charge non-public, which this new law allows, is something that we'll have to change our programming to do. And again, that's in all 16 case management systems. So as we look at what the state police is doing, developing their rules engine, we're continuing to work with them. We have meetings with them yet this week to talk about the ongoing processes once their rules engine has determined that an individual charge is subject to automatic set-aside. So the computer programming to get to the calculation that Ms. Sudbury showed us about Utah is underway in Michigan, and we'll do the same kind of testings that she described Utah went through. Once the state police does the calculation on their end, they're responsible for communicating that information to us. We're really hoping to work with them to make sure that's mostly an automated process with as little human involvement as possible. And we will then have those individual convictions set aside. We do not need to notify the local law enforcement making the arrest in those cases, because law enforcement, before responding to requests for public information, will just go to the criminal history records section of the state police through the law enforcement information network and determine whether or not the conviction is there, whether there is a conviction or there's none whatsoever, and then they know what information can be made available to the public. So lots of work left to be done, but those three things. The page 11 of the first document I put a link up to will tell you how it's going to work in Michigan, which charges may be subject to automatic set-aside. The courts are working on the non-printable misdemeanors. The Michigan State Police are well on their way to creating the rules engine, they call it, for the automatic felonies and printable misdemeanors. That's where we are.
Thank you so much, Judge Boyd. So we will wrap up today's presentation with John and Kamau, who will talk a bit about the public education outreach events that Safe and Just Michigan will be doing over the next year. And then from there, if we have a few minutes left, I think we have maybe 1 or 2 questions from the audience that we could go ahead and address some questions and answers.
Thanks, Sheena. A couple things just to piggyback about the automatic expungement law. I believe it is the broadest by some measures that's been passed so far. It permits, as Judge said, up to 2 non-assaultive felonies to be automatically expunged. And in addition, there's no exclusion of eligibility based on unpaid criminal justice debt. And that is something that we've seen in other states that have passed these laws. So that's a major step forward as well. In terms of impact, as Judge Boyd said, the data is not so good in these systems. And I don't think anybody other than the state police really knows the precise likely impact, but the best estimates that we've seen puts the impact of the automatic expungement at 500,000 to 1 million people on the day it goes into effect, which is really exciting. I mean, you're talking about maybe 40% of the people with criminal records in the state of Michigan getting those records sealed from a legislative change. Because so many people are going to be affected by the law, and because, like Utah, we do not have any direct notice provision in the law. And the reason for that is the government doesn't know where everybody is. Like the courts that have these convictions, they have no way of finding people at this stage. So the best we can do is just get the word out as broadly as we can. Make sure as many people as possible in the state of Michigan know that on April 11, 2023, this great automatic expungement law is going to go into effect. And the other piece that we're trying to work on there is we're hoping to convince the state to make a means of checking eligibility available to people. This is what Noella was working on in Utah. But what ideally on April 11, 2023, there will be an app or a website that people can go to confirm the records have been cleared. So because notice is so important, that's what we're going to be focusing on in the coming year, more and more. But we don't want to just stop doing the wonderful expungement work we've been doing, because that's been really helpful in building up a network that can help reach out broadly across the state. And it's brought a lot more people into the work that we do. So I know we're still figuring out some of what the rest of the year will hold, but Kamau has some information to share about some of our near-term events and also how to get involved.
Thank you, John. As you mentioned, we're going to be continuing our efforts to support the expungement by application process, which is obviously petitioning the court to have your convictions expunged. That will come in 2 forms, obviously, as we mentioned, the expungement fairs that we continue to do, along with the webinars that we've done with respect to building outreach and getting the word out with respect to the petition process and with respect to the upcoming automated expungement program. I can speak to at least the next 2 months, April and May. We have roughly 10 Clean Slate events lined up. Primarily, they're expungement fairs. So some of the bigger fairs we're working on will occur in Oakland County, Wayne County, and in Genesee County. The Oakland County Fair will be on April 30th. The Genesee County Fair will be on May 4th. And then the Wayne County Fair is something we're still working on, and we hope to have that finalized pretty soon. And obviously when we do, we'll let everyone know when that date will be. What I'm going to do is I'm going to include in the chat some ways in which you can reach out to us. So we always get emails regarding the expungement process and whether or not we can have an expungement fair in a particular area or community. So feel free to reach out to us via email at info@safeandjustmi.org. I've also included in the link our volunteer attorney sign-up form. So if you're wanting to volunteer for one of these events, you can sign up through that form as well. Thank you.
So we're already at the end. We have 1 minute left. And so there was one question. I'm not sure if we want to answer that via chat on Facebook. The questions was, where can individuals go for help with the expungement process without paying huge lawyer fees? Does anyone have a quick answer to that?
Yeah, I think Kamau is the best person to ask.
So I would say that person has a couple of options. As John mentioned earlier on, we partner with a number of legal aid organizations around the state who may be able to accept that person's case or take on that person's case pro bono. So that's always an option. Another option would be attending one of the expungement fairs that we're having around the state. At that fair, they'll be able to speak with an attorney. The attorney will determine whether they're eligible or not, and then help them at least initiate the petition process.
Thank you. And I know we're at time. I wonder if I have facilitated privilege, because I think there's a really important question that came through the chat. So let me just go ahead and read it. Let me see. Sorry. Sorry. If expungements are going to be automatic, let's see. If expungements are going to be automatic, basically, what are the benefits going to an expungement fair and do everything manually?
So the automatic expungement is not as permissive as the regular process. There's a lot of convictions that you can get sealed through the regular process that you can't through the auto. Most importantly, if your conviction involves some kind of an assault or other form of violence, can't be sealed through the automatic process. That was something the legislature didn't want to play ball on. So those folks are always going to have to go to the normal petition process. As multiple conviction situations fall into the same boat.
That's really helpful. And I also see that Noella said this is similar to Utah. Some offenses eligible for automation, some are not. So we're at time, but let me just say this. I want to thank all the speakers that came out today, and Safe and Just Michigan. And John, let me just say, it is definitely a testament to your leadership and your organization leadership that you're able to pull the speakers that you pull, the prominent agencies, electeds to come and use this time to educate people, and always being intentional to make sure that people are getting the word out, getting information, being informed, and providing resources. And I truly thank you for your partnership, for what you're doing in this space, and also for the people of Michigan. I will go ahead and I think I'm gonna pass it over to Josh, and this will conclude our day. Are you giving me the nod, John? Okay.
Yeah, I'm here. Safe and Just Michigan thanks you for participating in today's event. We'll be hosting more webinars, so please keep an eye out throughout the spring and summer. If you are near Lansing, we are presenting The Business Case for Criminal Justice Reform with Jeff Korzenik tomorrow at noon in the Speakers Library at the Michigan Capitol Building. You can find more details at safeandjustmichigan.org on the events page. We hope that you will join us. On the screen, we've included several ways that you can keep in contact with Safe and Just Michigan. We look forward to connecting with you soon. Thanks again for participating in today's webinar. We hope to see you again soon. Have a great day.